Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're watching Startup Central right here on ET Now. And on today's show, well, it's an International Women's Day special right here on the show. Women are stepping up, innovating and shaping industries of the future. And it's amazing to be witnessing that change, honestly. We'll be getting you two critical voices from the business ecosystem. Women who, on the basis of their sheer grit, courage, resilience and perseverance, carved out their path in spheres dominated traditionally only by men. Joining us shortly will be Kiran Majumdar-Shaw of Biocon and Naya Sagi of Edition and Baby Chakra. But ladies and gentlemen, before we get on and proceed to those interactions, let's first take stock of where women stand in the entrepreneurship domain. In fact, we've sourced some data from Traction, and here are some numbers. Now, in the year 2024, as far as funding of tech startups is concerned, the overall funding was $11.8 billion. And of that, the funding of women-driven startups was around $1 billion. And that essentially represents close to 8%, rather 9% of the overall tech funding. Now, female founders, they account 7.5% of all active startups. In fact, over 2.9 thousand startups in the space have received funding till date. Now, these are owned by women. But what about the IPO story, given that 2024 and 2023 were rather big on the public markets, while 5 women-led startups went public? So we will definitely be focusing our interactions with these ladies on the basis of this data that we've sourced from Traction. So let's first go to our guest then. The first guest joining us right now, Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, the Executive Chairperson of Biocon and Biocon Biologics. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us here on ET Now. Ma'am, you are a first-generation entrepreneurs. It's been 45 years for you. When you started Biocon, it was, of course, a high-risk bet that you took. How did you manage to break out of the mold that women were expected to be back then in, which is essentially to be homemakers?
If I recollect my, my starting days in being an entrepreneur, I believe that every entrepreneur is driven by a sense of purpose, a sense of aspiration, a sense of ambition. And I think it is that sense of ambition that actually provides you with the strength, the courage that you need to basically drive your purpose. And I think that's what it did. It made me resilient. It made me, wanting to take on challenges. It made me fearless in many ways. And I think even though I faced a number of challenges, I just felt I had it in me to overcome them. And I think that is true of every entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs don't see obstacles and challenges the way other people do. I think they believe that they can overcome these challenges, they can overcome these obstacles and, carry on with what they want to do. So that's really what the DNA of every entrepreneur is and should be.
Absolutely, ma'am, and that's essentially what the approach that should be taken by all entrepreneurs. Now, you've had an incredibly successful career building Biocon, and it was at a time when startup, founders like yourselves could not get access to capital. I believe you were also denied a job once because of being a woman. So let's focus on some of the other challenges that you faced as a woman entering a field that's been traditionally dominated by men. So combining, let's try and combine those challenges that are related to workplace, societal attitudes. Do speak about some of the challenges that you faced while building Biocon.
So when I look at some of the key challenges I faced when I was building Biocon, it was really about access to capital, which I think was the most difficult challenge that I faced. Second was, of course, getting people to join me in what I was trying to build. And when I say people, you want professionals to join you. And so I found it very difficult to get professionals to understand what I was doing and to join me in my journey. That was the second very difficult challenge I had. And of course, the third difficult challenge I had was to be accepted as a woman in business and as a young woman in business because I was 25 years old. So I was never taken seriously. And it was a time when women were very rarely seen pursuing a business career or an entrepreneurial career. So I had all these challenges, which really made it very difficult for me to go about building my business with ease. So, whether it was knocking at doors of banks, whether it was, trying to get professionals to, accept an offer that I was making to them, or whether it was, of course, explaining to people how serious I was about my business because they couldn't even understand what biotechnology was.
And Ms. Shaw, you overcome all of them and built Biocon successfully. And even though, ma'am, there are very many women now in the startup space, many successful women founders as well. Do you think the capital markets and VCs have done a great job when it comes to supporting women founders and believing in their ideas?
I still believe there is a bias in the capital markets, in investors, and when it comes to banks in terms of the way they treat entrepreneurs or business people. I think men find it easier to access capital than women, and I find that even today because a lot of women give me the same problems. And when it comes to professionals wanting to join a startup, they prefer to join a startup started by a man than a woman. So there is that bias continues. And you only overcome that bias when you start demonstrating success. So you have to go over a success phase when people then start having the confidence to either provide you capital or to basically join you in pursuing a professional career. So I just feel that things haven't changed as much as they should. Because even today, I think women do have very similar problems, though at a much lower scale than what I have.
Absolutely, ma'am. And to add to what you're saying, even when you step in the most powerful of offices, women still don't have it easy. There are preconceived notions, misogynistic attitudes, and a man most often does not have to prove himself in the way that women need to, and many a times it goes against women. So societal change coming about is one thing, ma'am, but what policy push can help more equity, achieve more equity for women in the workforce?
I enough policies. I must be very honest that I think the government is doing a lot to support women, to provide women with great opportunities. I think there's a lot being done even at a policy level. So I don't think there is dearth of policies or support from the government. I think the real challenge is in the mindset. I think corporates have to basically ensure that they are not just ticking the box, it is not just tokenism, but that they seriously believe that gender parity will make their businesses more successful. And I know that in our own organization, we've had a huge challenge trying to recruit women in our manufacturing, divisions. And that was largely because of the policy that the local government had on working hours for women. But the moment that was changed, today I'm very happy that we have an all women's workforce in many of our manufacturing divisions. So I think that's as far as I can actually see in terms of policy changes. But other than that, I think it is for companies to make sure that they continuously focus on gender parity as a very important enabler of success.
Absolutely, ma'am. A level playing field needs to be made available, and very important point that you made about tokenism. That tokenism of not just celebrating Women's Day just one day and ignoring the rest needs to be done away with. That also is a very important point. But finally, ma'am, what legacy would you like to leave as a woman in business, and what do you hope your journey will inspire in others?
My business has been about impacting global healthcare. And I hope that my legacy is about how I disrupted, the global healthcare space and provided affordable access to patients anywhere and everywhere who needed these kind of medicines. So that's the legacy I want to leave, saying that I did make a difference to global healthcare with all that I did during my lifetime.
And you've built that legacy rather successfully. Ma'am, one final question before we let you go. Since you've been an investor as well, what do you foresee for yourself from here on?
Well, I do invest in a lot of startups and I like to encourage entrepreneurs. My biggest concern about entrepreneurship is about scaling. I don't want ideas to remain in a crucible. I don't want ideas to be stunted. I want those ideas to scale up and make big impact. And my message to young entrepreneurs is please think big. Please, ensure that your ideas scale up and make good impact and realize good commercial gains for you. Because without that, you will not create value. And that's my key message to all entrepreneurs who are starting off in their entrepreneurial careers.
Absolutely, ma'am. Thank you very much for joining us this evening on ET Now and sharing your thoughts on what really women need to do to keep pushing and keep thinking big. And ladies and gentlemen, that was Kiran Majumdar-Shaw saying it as it is, the challenges that she faced and, of course, the opportunities that women need to keep pursuing. On that note, it's time for us to slip into a very short break, but coming